Good morning, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Wednesday, the 8th of August, 2012. A look out at the western Atlantic. You can see what is now Tropical Storm Ernesto well inland over the Yucatan Peninsula. Still a very vigorous low-level circulation. Strong winds still impacting the coast and rough seas. Those conditions will gradually improve. Ernesto forecast to cut across the southern Bay of Campeche and into mainland Mexico down here again as a hurricane in the next couple of days. The National Hurricane Center showing it becoming a hurricane here just before landfall. Luckily, it doesn't have a lot of water to work with, but upper level winds favorable enough, and the sea surface temperatures definitely warm enough across this region in the low to mid 80s that Ernesto will have a chance to redevelop some and become a hurricane before impacting the coast down here. Look at the rest of the water temps in the Gulf, mid to upper 80s at the least, some cases well above that, just very, very warm. And then look what's happening off Florida. Interesting here off the northeast coast, water temperatures only 80 to 81 degrees, a little bit of upwelling going on there, pushing some of that colder water up. Heat potential, the actual measurement of how much energy is in the water, you're not looking for just the surface, the skin of the ocean, but how deep does that 80-degree line extend, and where you have these high heat content values, the 80-degree line goes farther down into the water. Well, where Ernesto is going to cross, heat content values in the low to mid range, so enough for it to take advantage of and possibly become a hurricane again. So folks in Mexico need to be ready for that. Luckily, as I mentioned, it does not have as much water to work with, so the odds of it becoming a very strong hurricane are slim. You can't rule it out, but at least it does not have days and days and days of warm water to work with. The broader perspective of the Atlantic Basin, again, you can see that very tight circulation ball there, very well organized system. It was able to ramp up right at landfall, and as I've mentioned on the blog and in the videos, it is our experience when we track hurricanes on land at their landfall point, when they're intensifying, the effects seem to be more exaggerated and you get stronger gusts of wind. So I imagine it was quite a rough night down here in portions of Mexico where Ernesto made landfall. Looking at the upper level winds, you can just kind of tell here, very strong, with a trough carved out over the western Atlantic, and that's going to impact the remnants of Florence here, which have practically no chance of redeveloping. Then we have 92L out here, fairly long area of low pressure. It's sort of oblong in shape, and it's battling only marginal conditions. I say battling because systems have been struggling so far. We're still a week away from the start of the traditional ramping up of activity. Nevertheless, a lot of the computer models that do develop this system bring it off in the general direction of the Lesser Antilles here over the next several days, so we'll obviously keep an eye on that. Nothing to worry about just now. This will be interesting to watch because most global computer models in one form or another develop this once it hits the water, and then there are other impulses of energy over Africa that also need to be monitored because we're getting into the time of year where climatology would suggest that most of these waves, these tropical waves of energy, have a chance to develop. So now's the time to make sure you're ready. If you haven't thought about it much, maybe you should start doing so. In the eastern Pacific, Tropical Storm Gilma, I'll show you why that won't be a concern to anywhere along the Mexican coast. Then we have another area trying to develop to the southeast of Gilma. And if Ernesto survives the track across Mexico and gets into the eastern Pacific and redevelops there, which it's not likely to do, but if it were to do so, it would get the next name on the list in the Pacific. So it would lose its Ernesto name, and if we don't get the H storm by then, it would take on the H name in the eastern Pacific. That's what happens when they cross basins. Looking at the track for Gilma, forecast to become a hurricane and then die out over colder water, never getting anywhere close to the southwest coast of Mexico or the Baja, so no worries out that way. It'll be nice and calm for you. So there you have it. Good look at the tropics. Nothing to worry about land-wise except, obviously, where Ernesto is. And that's going to be a big rainmaker, too. I didn't want to wrap up before I mentioned that a large circulation like that, at least it's not moving too slow, but nonetheless, those very heavy rains a big problem, along with your other effects of storm surge along the coast, and obviously the possibility of near to exceeding hurricane force winds where it makes landfall again in Mexico. But the rest of the tropics not looking too bad. Alright, well again, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I appreciate you watching the video. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll have another one again for you tomorrow.